Hello and welcome to This Is Us. I'm Becca King-Reed. This week we're in the Santa Cruz Yacht Harbor, just about to board the O'Neill Sea Odyssey. It's a 65-foot catamaran on which school children take a field trip they never forget, a science cruise on the Monterey Bay. We'll find out more about this educational adventure later in the show. We'll also meet the man behind the Sea Odyssey program, Jack O'Neill, a surfing icon and innovator who is also credited with the invention of the wetsuit. And we'll visit the Stradivarius of surfboard shapers, Doug Hout. Doug has been shaping boards for nearly 50 years and is another Santa Cruz legend. And finally, we head off to class, surf class that is, with veteran big wave surfer Richard Schmidt. A former Santa Cruz lifeguard, Schmidt made his reputation riding the huge waves on Hawaii's North Shore, and now he's teaching just about anyone how to surf. We've got a lot of great stories to share, and it all starts now.
This is us.
This is us.
This is us.
Welcome back. Joining me is Dan Hafley of O'Neill Sea Odyssey. Welcome, Dan. Thanks for bringing us aboard your fabulous boat.
Well, thanks for coming on board.
Now tell us about this beautiful catamaran.
Well, this boat was literally unfinished when it was purchased by Jack and Tim O'Neill in the 1980s. The story is that the gentleman who owned the boat at the time, his wife said, it's either me or the boat. So he sold the boat. And they literally went down to Sand City, which is in Monterey Bay, and picked up the boat and dragged it or hauled it down Highway 1 and brought it here to the Santa Cruz Harbor. For a while, this boat was used to launch and to receive hot air balloons. This is when Jack was experimenting with hot air balloons. It's a very stable platform boat, and over the years was used for different activities. In 1996, that's when Jack and Tim started using this for the O'Neill Sea Odyssey, which is a science program for area schools.
So tell me a little bit about that program. What's the mission behind the Sea Odyssey program?
Well, the mission of the Sea Odyssey program is to encourage the protection and preservation of our living sea and communities through a hands-on education program. So the program teaches youth about watersheds that flow to the ocean and the relationship between land and the ocean.
Now, what children can participate in this program?
Well, these are 4th or 6th grade youth, so schools apply to our program. The program is free. They do community service, but basically we have a limit of 200 school classes a year that we can serve. So May 1st of every year, our application goes live on our website, and very quickly we fill up, and then we start scheduling the schools.
And what period throughout the year do you go out?
We essentially operate during the fall and during the spring. That's when we're able to get out of the Santa Cruz Harbor, which shoals up. Sand gets in the mouth sometimes, and then during the summer there aren't as many schools operating, but we'll take out a few in the summer, but mostly in the fall and in the spring.
Okay, well, we'll learn more about the Sea Odyssey program in just a minute, but first, John Bregg brings us the story of the man who started this all. Jack O'Neill also brought you the wetsuit and made cold water surfing a reality.
At 86, Jack O'Neill still has the passion for the environment and a love of surfing that you would only expect to find in a young man. The lure of the sport is simple. It has the capacity to turn boys into men and old men back into boys.
I got started surfing, God, this was in the 30s, and I just got a ride on a body surfing, just a straight-in ride. And I can still see that ride, and the idea stuck with me. And when I've gotten away from the beach, it's always thinking about the surf.
O'Neill calls Santa Cruz home, and it remains a beach town. For many, the cruise is the very soul of surfing on the West Coast, from Steamer Lane to Pleasure Point, down to the Hook, and all the way south to Manresa. Credited with inventing the wetsuit, he's become an iconic figure in the sport. He's the chief reason why athletes and even children can surf year-round despite brutal water temperatures that hover in the low 50s. Along the way, he has redefined the surf industry and helped to create a culture and a lifestyle. Born in Denver and raised in Southern California, O'Neill returned from serving in the U.S. Navy during World War II and then moved to San Francisco, where he began body surfing and then board surfing. His biggest challenge back in the 1940s was trying to find some way of staying warm in the frigid water.
We tried everything. When you're sitting on a board with a wool sweater, if you get the sweater wet, then you got all that cooling by evaporation. I used to go around to, there were a lot of surplus stores in those days. And I'd go to see what the military, Navy, SEAL team and stuff. And I got some of their suits, and what they had, you put long underwear on, then you put rubber over the top of that. This is just a sheet rubber, like an inner tube rubber. And you put it together here in the back or some way. It was great as long as it lasted. It was good for going in and out. You know, you go under the surf and stuff, but to go out there and surf in it, it'd always come apart. And when that would come apart, and get filled with water, you were in trouble.
O'Neill never gave up on his idea of ways of perfecting a wetsuit. He finally came up with a vest and some unicellular foam for his first prototype.
I had taken physics, and I knew what the K factor and how the refrigeration, keeping it warm and cold. And I started out making a vest. That worked okay, but it was kind of like a straitjacket because the foam did not have enough tensile strength. So I put some sheet plastic over the top. It had to be close fitting because you had insulation through the material, but if you get too much water in and out, you lose your warmth value.
O'Neill opened his first surf shop in San Francisco, but then moved south down the coast to Santa Cruz. He continued to make improvements on his wetsuit, and by the time the 1960s hit, the sport of surfing had taken off and had gone mainstream. The music, the mystique, and a new California culture would eventually go worldwide. Before you knew it, kids in Kansas would embrace surfing, and they were 1,500 miles from the nearest ocean. No one was more stunned than Jack O'Neill.
I don't think there's anybody more surprised than I am. I remember one of the guys on the beach. He says, "O'Neill, you're going to sell the 5 guys on the beach, then you're going to be out of business."
For the record, the black eye patch is real. Jack lost his left eye after he was struck by a leash designed to prevent surfboards from getting away and hitting the rocks. Jack's Buccaneer image and the O'Neill logo have gone on to become synonymous with the sport, and you can find his name on surfboards, board bags, swimsuits, clothing, shoes, and of course, wetsuits.
I thought when I started that I was going to have a surf shop, a few friends to surf with, and hopefully enough to get by on. But it's just got in at the right time. Timing is everything.
While the O'Neill brand has enjoyed tremendous success over the years, at this point in his life, Jack takes his greatest amount of pride in his work with school children. O'Neill Sea Odyssey is a free youth science program that is centered around a floating classroom. The boat is a 65-foot catamaran and works with 4th through 6th graders on Monterey Bay. Dan Halfley is the executive director that oversees the program, and since 1996, they have worked with more than 47,000 youngsters from schools, community centers, and youth groups.
We teach them science, biology, we teach them about watersheds, we teach them how to protect the planet, how to protect the ocean. So we work with schools to accomplish this. We're serving 192 schools this year. We have the free program, it's a science field trip. In addition, we supply curriculum for their classrooms so they can use ocean concepts to learn science in their classrooms. Teachers love it, the kids love it.
I think that's one of the best things I ever did. And we started 11 years ago, and especially today, we're having so much trouble like global warming, and the kids just have to shape the country different than what we did. We've got to be more conscious rather than destroying nature, let nature manage itself.
Jack O'Neill is a lion in winter, and while he might not surf any longer, his spirit can be clearly seen every time someone takes off on just one more wave.
Welcome back to Santa Cruz and the O'Neill Sea Odyssey. Dan Hafley here with me. Dan, let's talk a little bit about the program.
Okay.
What do kids learn when they go out on this fabulous boat?
So we have 3 learning stations on the boat and back in our laboratory at the Santa Cruz Harbor. The first is marine biology, which is the collection of phytoplankton and zooplankton here. So each of the groups of kids take samples of plankton. The second station is the ecology station, which the kids learn about the nearshore kelp forest habitat and the sea otters and what kelp is used for and the different components of that habitat. And the third is navigation, which is mathematics, and it also gives the youth a sense of place and gives them a sense of direction. So when the kids get back to the classroom, they also learn about these elements as well, and they all flow together essentially. So when the program is over, we have curriculum on our website that each classroom uses, and one of the things that we do is we enter data. So if the kids collected plankton at a certain point on Monterey Bay, then we'll also give them the coordinates of where they collected that through their navigation unit. So the kids are very involved in learning. It's a hands-on learning program that we provide here. So it's a half-day program on the boat, the field trip, and then the rest of it is curriculum that they use in the classroom that's based on the ocean. This is all standards aligned, so your education standards, your federal standards, and your state education standards are met through this program.
Now, you say it's very hands-on. So tell me a couple of the activities that they do with their hands. What do they get to do while they're on the boat?
One of the things they will do is they will actually take a plankton net, which collects plankton. It's a long net, and they'll throw it overboard, and they'll collect a sample, and they'll haul it up, and they'll look at the sample, and they'll write down the data points from the sample, for example. Another thing they do is that they will have an otter pelt that was donated to the program. This is an otter that had died of natural causes, and the kids will actually feel the otter pelt and will learn about kelp, and they'll actually get a sample of kelp that we'll take on the way out, and the kids will actually learn about these things by feeling them hands-on. So hands-on is a very effective way of teaching youth.
That all makes sense.
Oh yeah.
Okay, well, we'll learn more about this program when we come back, but first, let's meet one of the arguably one of the best surfboard shapers in the world, right here in Santa Cruz, Doug Hout.
It's the ocean song and symphony, and if you're lucky enough to hear the music, your life is never the same. Part ballet, part high-velocity sport. Surfing is part of the very tapestry of California. The surfers who ride those waves require a bit of magic, which brings us to one of the sport's true artists, surfboard shaper Doug Hout. For 50 years, Hout's been creating, crafting, and shaping surfboards for the sport that he loves.
It's really cool to create something, and then you see the effect of what you've created out in the water and somebody enjoying it with a smile on their face. So you know you did something good in your life.
Born in Wisconsin, Hout moved west with his family in the 1950s to Los Altos. When he was 15, Hout began navigating Highway 17 to Santa Cruz, and in 1957, he discovered surfing.
I saw the guy surfing on the boards, and I said, I've got to learn that. That looks way too cool. Because you get a ride in, but you paddle back out, so I got a little bit of both. I got the good exercise, and I got a thrill for the labor of paddling out, so that was way cool.
According to Hout, surfing in Santa Cruz in the late 1950s and early 60s was paradise. There just weren't many guys in the lineup.
It was wide open. There was nobody here hardly, you know. I mean, Pleasure Point was almost a secret spot, you know, and 4 Mile and Waddell Creek and all those spots were, you know, nobody even surfed them because there was no need to, because you had waves right here, and the conditions in Santa Cruz are so good because it's tucked into the bay, and the prevailing winds are usually on the outside, so you have a lot of real nice conditions for a glassy wave.
An excellent swimmer and natural athlete, Hout excelled in the water and on a board. It wasn't long before he parlayed his skill as a surfer into a way of making a living. He started shaping boards in Hawaii in 1961. Eventually, he returned to Santa Cruz and worked for the surf legend Jack O'Neill.
And then I worked for another company, George Olson Surfboards, and I started doing some mainstream shaping for him. And then I just broke off from him, and I started my own shop in 1965.
Hout has been in the same location on the west side of Santa Cruz since 1969, and he's never eased up in his pursuit of the perfect board.
Well, the shaper's got to have a passion for what he's doing. He has to have a feel for what he's doing. He's got to put together designs that work for his area. It keeps going because the designs are always in constant refinement. You know, we learn new things every year. And the kids start doing more maneuvers, so you have to build equipment to make those maneuvers happen. And it's just like, it's a never-ending story.
Hout has surfed some of the most challenging breaks in Hawaii, including Waimea and Sunset, but he spent most of his time in his home waters of Santa Cruz. During that time, he figures that he shaped close to 30,000 boards. That's right, 30,000. If there's one thing that he's learned in all that time, it's that the customer is always right, always.
Aesthetically, how it looks, you know, and how it rides, you know, basically how it rides, because some boards, they don't really look that good, but they ride really good. So, and some of them, it's all in the eyes of the beholder. Some guys will see a design on a board, they'll hate it. I'll have it in the lineup here. They go, God, how'd you pick those colors? And another guy will come in and go, God, that's the best looking surfboard I've ever seen in my life. I mean, a lot of them are repeat customers. You know, I've built boards for some of these guys that were growing up when they were teenagers, and now I'm building boards for their kids and them. So it's kind of a big family.
Once Hout is done shaping, the glasser applies the fiberglass to the board, and you're one step closer to not only a finished product, but a potential masterpiece. Over the years, Doug Hout's boards have become exceptionally valued as pieces of art.
Yeah, well, they collect them. It's like anything, people want things that they can collect because not only are they beautiful, but they also gain a value. Like some boards that I made years ago they're worth $10,000, $15,000, you know. So they paid $150 for them or $200 for them. Now they're worth 15 grand.
So after 50 years and that many boards, why is he still at it? Well, the answer's pretty simple. He is passionate about what he does.
I enjoyed it so much, and I'm kind of an artist, but this is the way I could express myself. Creating things that people enjoy, and also I enjoyed it myself, and it's a never-ending learning process. I've shaped almost 30,000 surfboards, and I'm still learning how to do it. So there's no end to it. It just keeps going and going and going. The evolution of surfboard design is a spiral evolution. So boards we do here on the spiral, it'll come back again maybe 10 years later. You'll have the same board you did down here, but it'll be more refined. So it's a continuous refinement of the designs that are out there right now, and it's just never ending.
The next time you're out admiring the athletes surfing the waves, remember the man and the composer who builds the boards and who always hears the ocean song.
Welcome back to the O'Neill Sea Odyssey. Dan Hafley and I are just talking about the fabulous program that goes on here on this boat. And Dan, after all these years of taking kids out on the sea, what do you hope or what do you know that they get out of this program?
Well, it's funny because every year we do an annual evaluation of our program. So we get feedback from the kids, we do a survey, and we get feedback from the teachers. And that feedback is very valuable to us. It shows us that about 97% of the youth that participate in our program actually learn about the ocean and how watersheds affect the ocean and how our personal behavior affects those watersheds that affects the ocean. We also did a long-term study of our program and found that 75% of the youth that went through our program 7 to 10 years later retained sophisticated knowledge of how non-point source pollution, how pollution from our streets, from our farms, from our houses, from our factories, affects the ocean, how it gets in there, and how to prevent it. So think about it. These are kids who are going to be our future leaders, and they have a very, very sophisticated knowledge of non-point source pollution, of ocean pollution, and they have more knowledge than adults do about this, and that's a result of our program. We were able to isolate that in the study. So we're very excited about that. that we're able to train future stewards. We've had about 65,000 kids that have participated in this program, and we think that's quite a good place to start.
Now, what are your plans for the future?
Well, we want to certainly continue our program. We think the model works very well. Schools that are cash-strapped are able to use our one-day program, so we want to be able to serve more kids.
We'll be back in a minute with more from Dan and the Sea Odyssey, but first, John Gregg profiles Richard Schmidt. He made his reputation in the big waves in Hawaii and today teaches people how to surf right here in Santa Cruz.
Rather than have your hand around the edges.
These days, he's recognized as one of the very best teachers in the world, and his surf school in Santa Cruz is legendary.
Spring up to a good stance.
It wasn't that long ago that Richard Schmidt was also recognized as one of the top big wave riders on the planet. Taking surf lessons from Richard Schmidt is a little like getting hitting lessons from Willie Mays.
There you go. That little adjustment you made.
If Santa Cruz is the soul of surfing in California, well, Richard Schmidt is the high priest of the sport. He's a combination of amazing athlete, great coach, and the philosopher king of the waves.
Surfing really keeps you young in spirit, in your mind, and also your body. You know, physically, you get a great workout from it, and then mentally, you get out there in the ocean, and it's really easy to get into a meditative state and just kind of focus on the moment. And then there's moments of just really relaxed state where you're seeing the dolphins go by, or the sea otters, or the sun setting, and then all of a sudden you have the other side of that is all the exhilaration and adrenaline you get from catching a wave and harnessing that natural power of the ocean.
Born in Santa Cruz in 1960, Schmidt fell in love with the ocean riding air mattresses as a youngster in the whitewater. A natural athlete, Schmidt surfed year-round and eventually spent 15 years as a lifeguard in his hometown.
Just grew up surfing Santa Cruz, and the waves are really big and powerful. The water's cold, it's kind of rugged, and going through high school, just really embracing the bigger stuff.
Schmidt went to Hawaii in 1979, and he ended up spending 6 months on the north shore of Oahu, where he excelled at big wave surfing.
I did really well in Hawaii. I kind of was surfing really big waves at a time when not many Californians were doing that, and actually not a whole lot of people were doing that. Big wave surfing wasn't really that much on the radar in the surfing magazines and all that kind of stuff, as opposed to now big wave surfing's a real big deal. At one point I was considered California's best big wave rider, and I did well in a lot of the events over there, the events they had at Sunset Beach and Haleiwa and Pipeline, and just really enjoyed the opportunity to surf in a contest venue at surf spots that normally are really crowded and hard to get a good wave at a spot like Pipeline.
Schmidt spent 15 years surfing some of the very best waves on the planet, including one epic day at Waimea Bay.
It was like 25 to 30 feet and just pumping waves, and the most elite surfers on the planet out there getting the most amazing rides.
Schmidt would also be one of the very first surfers to ride Mavericks at Half Moon Bay.
Surfing big waves is something you have to be mentally psyched. It takes a certain amount of mental state and commitment and passion to be able to go out there and paddle in or harness into one of those giant waves. And you know, if you wipe out, I mean, you could get damaged out there, and to pull out after one of those things, it's like you plug yourself into a light socket. You're just like tingling, trembling. It's just like a feeling like no other. It goes out to sea. So say you guys are out there.
Schmidt continues to promote his sport one student at a time at his surf school, and he's been going strong for 34 years.
I started teaching surfing back in 1978, and just kind of low-key, you know, for the local parks and recreation. And over the years, more and more people were wanting my services to teach them, so I branched out to doing overnight week-long surf camps here in Santa Cruz. We go down to Costa Rica in the winter and do week-long programs down there. My wife, she teaches the yoga portion.
California has had more than its share of politicians and celebrities. But we only have one poet that hears the muse and rides the waves with effortless grace. And he goes by the name of Richard Schmidt.
I just feel so lucky to have something like surfing in my life. It's been my livelihood, and it's something that I enjoy so much and I'm so passionate about, and gives so much to me, that to be able to share that with people that I know will make their life that much more enriched and make them that much happier is just really rewarding for me.
Welcome back to the O'Neill Sea Odyssey, here with Dan Hafley. And Dan, I have to ask you one more question. You had mentioned early on that Mr. O'Neill liked to launch hot air balloons from this boat, and I would just love to hear a little more detail about that.
Sure. Well, they would either launch or bring the balloon back to this boat. Oftentimes they would launch from our building at the Santa Cruz Harbor, and this was a very good platform for that for the hot air balloons. Many, many years ago, Jack looked at the ocean and saw a playground, and that's how he started his business, with the wetsuits and surfing, etc., and hot air balloons, for example, for himself. When he started the O'Neill Sea Odyssey, he looked at the ocean as a classroom. So the ocean is many things. It could be a playground, and it can be a classroom.
And it's a great combo.
Absolutely.
As you've proven on this boat.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Dan, for bringing us aboard and telling us all about your program. We really enjoyed ourselves.
Thank you.
Well, for Dan Hafley and all of us at This Is Us, aboard the Sea Odyssey, I'm Becca King-Reed saying so long.
This is us.